Why does he look like that?
Present day. Present time.
Yo!
Hello?
Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. However you feel about these games, one thing is agreed upon. They, really could have done more. There was a standard set by previous remakes in the series. These remakes at base should, at the very least, be the original games with a new coat of paint. And these are... kind of that? Kind of. They didn't go whole hog, is my point. They went, partial piglet? Okay. Let me just cut to the chase already. You're not here to listen to me moan and gripe about my opinions about these remakes. There's 5 million other 2-hour-long video essays that you can go to for that. I'm just here to say that they didn't give the characters updated designs, and that upsets me. But I can do something about that. Well, sort of, anyway. Before we get into all that, though, hey, I'm Valkyrie System. I draw, and character design is my big thing. For the past 2 or so years, I've been working my ass off, making character designs for all the major characters from Diamond, Pearl, and yes, even Platinum. I haven't been flying solo though. At least, not fully. I've been working with staff from Luminescent Platinum, as well as people working on their own projects alongside them for feedback, to refine these designs till they shine. Now listen up for a moment, because this is important. These designs are not for Luminescent Platinum. They are not going to appear directly in Luminescent Platinum. However, I'm allowing these designs to be used by anyone who wants to make a mod for the characters, and that potentially could be compatible with Luminescent Platinum. I'm giving these designs to the community. If you're working on a mod for the characters in BDSP or Luminescent Platinum, you have my blessings to use these designs for your project. All I ask is that you give credit. Want to make some modifications? Contact me. My Blue Sky and Discord should be linked in the description. Now, here's the part where I show the designs, right? Well, I'm gonna spread these out. I spent the last 2 years of my life doing this, so I want to go into some real fine detail about the designs, as well as my process and inspirations. So to do that, it's better that I split these up. Otherwise, this video will be 5 million years long, and nobody wants that. That, and I'm not completely finalized with all of the designs just yet. I have some modifications that I want to make, but I have a decent amount that I'm comfortable with showing right now. Disclaimer, by the way. My initial drafts and designs will be much more rough than later drafts for nearly all of these characters. I use this project as a training arc for both my design sense and my raw skills, so keep that in mind before you judge my initial drafts. As for our first contestant, I'd say let's go from the beginning of the game, and make our way through naturally. And the first face you meet when you power on the game, as you probably knew from the cold opener anyway, is Professor Rowan. Let me use Rowan as a showcase for my thought processes, and how it's changed over the course of this project. First, let's take a look at my initial draft. As you can see, this is already quite different from his vanilla look. I gave him a hat with his design from Legends Arceus on it, I swapped out his formal vest with one of the sweater variety, and the necktie with a bow tie. Finally, I gave his coat and shoes a few more design flourishes and called it a day. At first, I was willing to call this good and leave it, but something felt wrong. It was way off, and I couldn't exactly put a finger on why for a little bit. Here's where I go into detail about my process. It's about character analysis first, and second, it's about previous remake analysis. For example, character analysis. Who is Professor Rowan, and what purpose does he serve in the world that he inhabits? Who he is and the role he plays should shine through in his design. These are where this new design personally fails, at least partially. Professor Rowan is an old man for sure, but this design just doesn't fit him. Rowan is a classy old bird, and a stern one at that. He's an intellectual and a bit of a grump. The kind of man that says harumph, if that makes sense. Sure, he's nice when you get to know him, but he's supposed to give off a sort of Stonewall personality when you first meet him. The hat and the bow tie give off a more goofy vibe that I think just doesn't fit Rowan at all. Next up is the previous remake analysis. This is the part where I use how previous characters that fill a similar role in those games are designed to inform how I go about redesigning a character. This can inform which characters are redesigned to what extents, or whether some characters are even redesigned at all. Additionally, it makes it easier to identify which characters are in need of bigger facelifts. I've divided these into two categories: subtle change and overhaul. Let's take two characters from previous remakes and compare and contrast them. Let's take a look at Eugene, for example. Eugene's look in Crystal is here, and his look in the DS remakes is this. Take away the art style differences and just look at the core features of the design. There really isn't too much of a difference between the two. His cuffs have changed, the collar of his cape has been altered, the shoes have been reshaped slightly, the buttons have been removed from his suit top, and he's been given a more prominent diamond pattern upon his suit. Sure, that sounds like a lot of differences, but I bet you never really noticed many of these changes. At most, I feel like if you weren't comparing the two directly, you probably noticed the addition of the diamond pattern at most. This is a subtle redesign, one that keeps the core of the design while updating it with a few smaller design cues and maybe a few more noticeable large changes. Next, let's take a look at Morty. Here's his original design, and here's his updated look. Do I have to explain this one to you? These are two completely different designs, and you can see for yourself why they changed it. It's not that Morty's original design was objectively bad, but it lacked the sort of direction they wanted for Pokemon trainers going forward, especially gym leaders. He kinda just looked like a guy, so they changed it, for the better, in my opinion. This is an overhaul. These completely changed the core of the character, and are overall completely different. Now that we've gone over the types of redesigns, let's talk Rowan. Since he's a professor, I took a look at how previous games have touched upon their designs to inform how I was going to go about it. Let's look at Professor Oak. Between his official art for the Game Boy games and their Game Boy Advance remakes, there really isn't much different between the two designs. He has some pens in his pocket, and his shirt collar is different. He has some buttons removed from his lab coat sleeve, I guess. The only real difference worth any note is the fact that he swapped out his slippers for a pair of loafers. Gotta admit, I think the slippers give him a bit more personality, but that's just me. If we take a look at Oak's design for the Johto games, in his GBC design, it's harder to tell many details, as his art has him facing away from the viewer. However, the two designs are pretty similar from what we can see, only with some pockets being added to the yellow blazer in the updated design. However, I'll take the newer design this time, because the old design features old Sammy committing the unforgivable sin of wearing socks with sandals. Finally, for the last of Oak's designs, we need to take a look at Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And we can see right off the bat that this is the most different so far from the other versions of the original Oak design. Which is to say that he swapped the colors of his shirt and slacks, and moved the pen from his waist pocket on his lab coat to his breast pocket. Not exactly a fashionista, is he? Okay, there's a bit more detail on the collar of the shirt, but does that really count? Regardless, this is the most different of the designs, and you can really see a through line between this and his previous designs. Next up is Professor Elm. Immediately, between the two official arts we have of him, we can notice a few key differences. Most notably, his collared polo shirt with the yellow stripe has been swapped out for a much more business-like button-up dress shirt. Aside from that, his loafers have been given a much more rounded look, with a design that looks more Pokémon-y, if that makes sense. His older shoes looked more like shoes you can find in real life. Additionally, if you'd notice, his glasses have been thinned out a bit to look more modern. The only other detail that's been changed is that he's been given some stubble under his chin. I'd hesitate to say that all of these papers are really a part of Elm's design here, considering it's flying all over the goddamn place. Either way, Elm has a few more differences than you would think, but all of the changes are really subtle, adding up to a design that, other than the shirt, you would have to really look to find the differences. Finally, we can take a look at Professor Birch, and as you can see, this is the exact same design. Seriously, I checked this design up, down, left, right, sideways, and upside down. I cannot find a single solitary difference that actually couldn't be chalked up to the art style, like the shape of his hair. The only things are that the soles of his sandals have a design on the bottom in Oros, but since no official art from the GBA era ever shows that detail, it's a moot point anyway. Hell, his bag has more changes than he himself does, It's had a pocket with a zipper removed from the front, giving it a more thin look, and the shoulder pad on the original strap has been presumably replaced with a buckle. His left sandal in the Oros design has a strap that grips onto the back of his foot, but his right sandal doesn't? Yeah, I got nothing. This design is pretty much the exact same. So, now that we've taken a look at all of these Professor designs, what did I gather from this? Well, I've prepared a time-lapse so you can see how I drew the renders I made, so why don't we have a take a look at that? What do you think? Let's go over the design in detail. First and foremost, this is obviously in the subtle redesign category, owing to the fact that previous remakes treated their professors in a similar fashion. Let's take a look at Rowan's design without the coat. Firstly, I kept his pants as the brown from his original 2D art. I feel it's a very classy looking color that complements Rowan's professional air. I changed his tie from the original brown to red. This complements the blue of his vest, and the bright colors of his torso will stand out from the dullness of his pants and shoes. Additionally, I changed his buttons from white to black, as I think they're a little classier. Finally, I add a little golden pin to his tie, right in the middle, with an engraved Pokeball design. I wanted to add a little something for visual intrigue that stands out beyond just swapping the colors around, and this felt just subtle enough. And now for the coat, the piece that I feel really completes Rowan's look. While I do like the original coat, I always found it odd how his coat is devoid of any details on it whatsoever. There's no seams, no buttons, it's all just one solid color. It's hardly even a coat, it's just fabric in the shape of a coat. So to remedy that, I added little bits of visual intrigue, with one more obvious change. I added this deeper brown color at the top of the coat just below the collar, and some buttons to the sleeves around the cuffs, and added a line to the cuff as well. I'd be more technical about what that is, but I don't really know how to explain it. Look, I'm not a tailor. You know, it's that part of the sleeve on coats where the line usually is. Finally, I changed the shape of his collar, had it pop up and out more, and gave it a fluffy inner lining. His old coat looked nice, but it didn't look particularly warm. I think this looks much more cozy. Also, this is a very subtle nod to his ancestor, Komodo, who was often seen wearing this coat with a very similar fluffy inner lining. It's much less on the nose than the logo on the hat that I previously gave him, and it utilizes a similar article of clothing to do so. I'm pretty happy with it overall. I don't claim to know exactly how they would go about these designs, but I think I nailed the guidelines pretty close at the very least. I hope I gave you an idea about my design process going forward, and a little taste of what I can promise for future designs. Admittedly, I'm a bit daunted by the task of making all of these videos for all of these designs. The task is gargantuan, but I've got my head held high. What do you think though? Got any feedback? Any advice? Just hate my guts and want to tell me like it is? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I'm very interested in hearing from you. And keep your ear to the ground for the next episode, because the next designs I'm showing off are quite important. And if you know the games, you know exactly what the next stop on our journey in redesigning Sinnoh is. Stay tuned, and I'll see you all next time.